So we already know that fundraising is mostly about building relationships, but that's kind of tough to do when you're not getting that many interactions with your donors. So really relationship building comes down to trust, which obviously is something that can take a long time to build. It's not one thing where you can like, oh, my donor will just kind of trust me automatically, but that's kind of the eventual goal. Like that's what we're trying to do, just from a global perspective, is to take someone who's never heard of our organization, and yes, we want them to trust the organization, but we want them to trust us as people. So there's a few things that a lot of our clients have done that have been really successful at this. Trust really just comes down to transparency. There's a couple different types of transparency we'll go over, and I can talk through that, but really it's about just being open about all the different things in your organization. This is transparency of operations, transparency of finances, it's transparency of impact. So all the things you're doing, I mean, you're a nonprofit, so all your stuff is gonna get kind of automatically shared through your 990 and published on Charity Navigator and all those sites that do that. But on top of that, you wanna be able to share your own stuff and kind of control your own message in as many ways as you can. The BBB Wise Giving Alliance did a study back in 2019, and they found that 73% of donors make decisions about where they give just based on trust. So trust being close to the number one factor. People will give to all kinds of organizations depending on what they support, but it almost all comes down to specifically trust in those three areas. So financial, operational, and impact. So financial transparency should be pretty self-explanatory, obviously. This is where you are sharing your books more than just the numbers that reflect Rule 990. Like obviously your program service revenue and fundraising and contributions and grants, like all those lines do exist on the 990, but there's not incredible detail about the split on your spending, and there should be. Like it really is helpful for donors to see, oh, we spend this much on admin, we spend this much on supplies, we spend this so much on outreach, marketing, and I think a lot of nonprofits have this fear that if we open up our books and let donors see that, oh, we pay our staff this much, or maybe the organization leases a building and it's kind of expensive. That's just kind of normal overhead, and people aren't turned off by that. They want to know, how are we spending this money? Why is it being used? And you kind of demonstrating that, no, this is how we spend money. You can look at everything that we're doing and trust us. Just kind of helps build that over time. The next piece is operational trust. Obviously, operational trust just comes down to how are you doing what you're doing. Yes, you're spending money, but what are the actual systems you have in place? What are the staff you have in place? What are the processes you have in place to deliver on your mission? So for an example, a school would be, these are the after-school programs that we have. These are the classes that we have. This is how we kind of run our day-to-day. This is how we decide for scholarships. And you don't have to publish any of this, like of all the things that are legally required to exist for transparency. These are kind of the above and beyond things that not everyone thinks about and doesn't need to know. But if you share these things and you do talk about these things, donors will automatically assume you have less to hide because you do. The third piece is obviously impact transparency, which should be self-explanatory. It is what the thing you do does. And that's confusing, but the thing that you do does. So it's not that, oh, we spent money to hire more teachers, again, in the case of schools, but those teachers resulted in much smaller class sizes. We went from sizes of 33 students to 22. And as a result, our test scores in the following subjects went up by this much because each student got more individualized attention or something like that. That would be an example of impact transparency. And it really is easy because you just talk about the great work that you do. These are easy things to share on your website. You can talk about it when you're trying to convince donors in a one-on-one meeting to part with their hard-earned money to support your mission. And it's something that can be really pervasive. And again, these are all things that are not required. You don't have to, from a legal standpoint, actually talk about all these things, but it really makes a huge difference in donors trusting you. And it's not even just a one-time thing. I mean, you have to kind of do this continually. So if you can always be thinking about, what can I do from a financial openness? What can I do from the way that my operations are run? And how can I share impact? Those three, if you can check those boxes, you're most of the way there on getting that transparency and earning the donor's trust. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. Okay, I'm just gonna close with 4 practical tips on how to actually increase transparency and trust, things that you can take that are actionable. These are just things that we've seen that work really well and don't cost or don't take that much to implement. So I would highly recommend trying 1 or more of these out in your own organization. The first is to kind of take advantage of the tools that you have. Obviously, technology being kind of the top of the list here. You probably have a website. You probably have some sort of presence on social media, and you want to litter both of those places with as much information as possible that is more behind the scenes. Not your aspirational, or we aim to do this, or this is our mission, vision, and values. Those things are fine. You should talk about those things. But really taking those 3 categories we talked about and just having them on various pages on your website, homepage, sharing little statistics and little bits of data, impact data on social media occasionally really helps people see that, oh, the work that you're doing is meaningful. Like, we're getting an outcome out of this. It's not just that I'm spending money and they're doing something with it, or I think it's going towards kids or women or animals or whatever your cause is. But it really specifically goes to making change. We have a place that we're in now, and then we get a donation, and after that donation, this new thing happens. And if that does happen, you should talk about it. It's really exciting. It's really cool when it does. Number 2 is would highly recommend committing to some version of regular reporting. And what I mean by that is having some sort of an impact report or a financial report that is more formal and gets published. So it's not, I'm sharing a fun statistic on social media. That stuff is good. We do want to do that. But more importantly, we want to actually report on the different things and having them all in kind of an organized way that can be PDF'd or something that can be downloaded. You can email this to donors. You can email this to prospects. You can have it live on your website. Lots of options on how to do this. There's no one correct way, but have some sort of a formalized system, even if it's once a year. Even if you have an impact report that you share once a year, that's all that donors want. They just want to see that their money is being spent well. And again, it seems like, oh, that feels kind of obvious, but most nonprofits don't do this. So if you're one of the few organizations that have a pretty detailed impact report that comes out even once a year, you're already ahead of most people. Definitely keep doing that. Number 3, and this one sometimes is maybe a little bit less obvious, so I do always like to encourage people, and I try to share this, is to encourage a dialogue. So we think about impact reporting and sharing information as kind of this one-way street, where in reality, the most effective way to give a donor a sense of trust, especially for the longevity of the trust, is to encourage a 2-way conversation. So if you are going to share information, maybe, especially with some of your top donors, do it in a setting where they can ask questions, or have a space where they can comment if it's a social media post, or if they have questions, they can reach out. So if there are things that you think are helpful, definitely share those, but there's no better information than just asking your donors, hey, what do you want to hear about? You know, what are the things that are important to you as we're sharing information? What are the most important things that you want us to regularly update you on? And just making a big difference in the dialogue and creating a kind of a 2-way relationship. It becomes less like one-to-many and more one-to-one, which we're always trying to do with donors anyways. And the 4th and final tip is to rely and actually use the third-party reporting mechanisms to your advantage. I'm talking about, of course, sites like Charity Navigator. Like, if you're even a medium-sized nonprofit, you probably have a profile on Charity Navigator already. Whether you want to or not, you can actually go on and request and submit extra data to get certain points and certain profile perks on that. The same thing with GuideStar. Like, everyone has access to GuideStar, and they can look up your financials and all of your reporting stuff. You can give GuideStar additional information so that when someone goes on GuideStar and sees your profile, you look very polished and presentable and transparent, and there's lots of information so people can make decisions about where they want to support. So we think of these sites as like, oh, this is our report card. You know, these are these reporting organizations that we don't have access to, and they're going to tell people about us whether we like it or not. Yes, they will do that, but we have some control over that narrative by getting involved in that conversation as well. People don't necessarily know that you can go on there and affect your score by submitting different things. So if you have these third-party sites that are going to be reporting on you anyways, you may as well use them as a tool to help kind of push along the things you're trying to do. That was a lot of information. So my recommendation is to try to pick one at a time and not try to do all of that at once. Of course, there's an end goal of trying to implement all these strategies, but maybe pick your favorite from the video and see how it goes for you. Implement it, play around with it, and start building some trust. Is your nonprofit struggling to reach its fundraising goals? You can chat with one of our experts live for free at pridephilanthropy.com or by clicking the link in the video description.